So thank you so much for having me here today. I always enjoy having the opportunity to discuss ideas and share stimulating intellectual thought. So today, I will be spending some time with you talking about several things, including the first part of the talk will analyze the nature of glamour labor. So I will be outlining that my book is actually a long social history of modeling and imaging technology and productive technology, and it's a book-length analysis of the concept, but I will give you the highlights today of what glamour labor is. So we'll be talking about glamour labor, and actually the book is called This Year's Model, Fashion Media and the Making of Glamour. So there will be ideas drawn from the book today. And I will also be discussing with you or talking to you about the value of glamour labor within specific imaging regimes. So I'm going to think through with you, what does it mean to say that there are different ways or modes of imaging that are given by different technologies. And then I will help us think about the value of the material body in the digitized world. And in that aspect, we will be talking about how digitization fosters the body's engagement with media technologies that open bodily connection and vitality to metering and regulation, and show how this process in turn makes bodily variability and unpredictability valuable, making the specificity of unique bodies into a source of value. So viewed through the lens of the Kardashians as glamour laborers, we are going to think through and examine how the fashionably cool's ever-morphing ideal seduces publics into the game of chasing it, and consider some questions raised by this scenario. So, shall we begin? I guess we started already, but let's keep going. Okay, so I'm sure many of you are aware of the fact that there is such a thing as fashions in bodies. We know they go in and out of fashion, but for a long time there seemed to be two distinct types. So I'm going to read here from my slide that somehow got formatted in a wonky way, but it still makes sense. So from the early 1900s onward, the fashionably lean line sought to distance itself from the pornographic associations of the hourglass figure popular in the theater and the working class culture from which it emerged. So the high-class adolescent asexual model of beauty, that would be this one, was consciously marked off from the low-class, voluptuous, earthy one. And this is from Lois Banner, an historian of beauty, an American historian of beauty. And so I have a couple of examples of the two different types that tended to be what was considered fashionable versus sexy or beautiful. So that's Theda Bara, silent screen star Theda Bara, and a typical flapper. We all know Marilyn Monroe, and a typical model of the same era, which we don't usually think of the 50s as an era when you would see this type of body as revered, but that was in fact the case. And this is Raquel Welch and Twiggy, so you can also see the two different types. However, recently, something has happened with regard to these two types, one being fashionable and one being not. So this is actually a shot of the Met Costume Gala, otherwise known as the Oscars of fashion. And we have three bums here on display. And these are women who, well, we know this is J.Lo, and that's our lady of the hour, Kim K, and that's Beyonce. And this set of images gave the New York magazine The Cut journalist occasion to comment that it seems that we are in a post-fashion moment. Okay, so what's going on here? Why do the clothes matter less than the bodies in them? What happened to the high fashion, low fashion divide? With the rise of fast fashion, this is one of the thoughts I've had about this. With the rise of fast fashion, everyone can look like they wear couture, but can everyone have the couture body? The message today seems to be, well, you can if you work for it. So in our image-saturated age, fashion, once a rarefied domain for the very few, has been spread to the masses by the likes of fast fashion purveyors such as, we call it H&M.
Yeah, we've got
You call it H&M, you call it Henny's, or Forever 21, and countless fashion websites promising the how-tos of how to wear and where to buy these clothes. So fashion encompasses more than just clothes now. It is becoming a lifestyle. And as Hyland pointed out, the rise of athleisure, which is a term that maybe is not all that familiar. It kind of makes sense though, right? Athleisure is either athletic clothes and leisure clothes that are then turned into fashionable clothes. So you put on your gym outfit and then you just wear it all day. And there are very high-end versions of athleisure. And so she is tying the rise of that type of clothing in which fitted lycra casings do not leave, let me say it again. in which everyone is running around in fitted lycra casings that may not be high design, but give you an exact sense of what we're working with. She's claiming that athleisure has permeated evening wear as well, which is an interesting concept. But of course, bodies have always been subject to trends. Look at the wayfish 90s, the hard body Jane Fonda in the 80s. But the ideal type right now is a particularly tricky feat of engineering. Simultaneously curvy and toned, voluptuous and meager, the Protestant work ethic. The Protestant work ethic writ onto flesh. So when you Google voluptuous and skinny, who should come up but our friend Kim? So in fact, this particular image and many of the images of Kim Kardashian are accompanied with lots of headlines about whether or not images of her have been photoshopped, which I think is funny because in fact her job is to look in person as if she's already been photoshopped. And so what's interesting about her effortful body is Kim's self-professed work ethic. So she, I claim, is a glamour laborer extraordinaire who tirelessly works on her body and image and has no patience for those who do not. She doesn't just have it, she works for it. So in this sense, she is so American. She is the daughter of a self-made man descended from immigrants. And her idea that one must work to get what one can get in life is kind of another version of the American dream. But what is she working at exactly? Some say nothing at all. In fact, Dean Kissick of ID magazine said that the Kardashian family is the most famous for being famous set of personalities around, and their stories appear to encompass the contemporary American dream in all its beauty and horror. And I imagine he's getting at the extreme inequalities that exist not only in the United States, but definitely in the United States. And so when we think about the Kardashians and how they're being chided for being famous, in fact, I would argue they're working very hard, or at least their images are working very hard. So they're selling the promise of the American dream, democratically available to all who are willing to work hard for it. But what is it exactly they're working at? So Kim and company are doing what I call glamour labor. So glamour labor has two aspects. It's two-sided. So there's what you would normally think of when you think of getting glamorous, which is the physical work on the body, going to the gym, plastic surgery, etc. But in tandem, these two together are becoming very prominent in our digitized age, in which you work on the body to create the image, you take the image to make the body look better, and then the goal is to make the body and the image closely resemble each other as possible. So that glamour labor, and also it involves keeping up with trends, staying in the know, checking the Twitter feeds about what the Kardashians did today or 5 minutes ago or whatever it was, knowing what the latest things on the runways were, et cetera. So there's a material and virtual aspect of glamour labor that come together in these actions. So in a sense, we could say that Kathleen Berry did a study of, I love this picture, of what were then called stewardesses, now we call them flight attendants, but she talked about how stewardesses at the time actually crafted femininity in a way that met with expectations, corporate expectations of what the feminine should be. So their wages of glamour, the payback of crafting their femininity in this specific way, was the wages of glamour. And so I'm taking this concept and saying, through my study of fashion models, I found that glamour labor intensifies this to spread beyond just a particular profession, like flight attendant or fashion model, and it's spreading to the general public in the digital age, which I am going to talk about in terms of the age of the blink, which we'll get to momentarily. So she's talking about meeting corporate and culturally approved expectations of femininity in a particular profession, and I'm talking about the speculative labor of crafting a body and personality to optimize and enhance its impact in hopes of a possible future reward. So in the process of glamour labor, the body becomes a currency with promotional value, limited only by the reach of the platform from which its image is launched. The value of the body within the platform of the digital is realized through self-branding and social media. And in fact, I'm claiming we're in a self-branding, social media on steroids type of economy today. So, so we'll come back to that in a second. Oh, we'll leave Tyra up for a minute. So in the process of glamour labor, the body becomes a valued set of production of images and ideals that promote connection. But what about regular people, not the Kardashians? How do we glamour labor? it's not just about going to the gym or to the salon. It is the work to be in the know about fashion trends and know about. This week there's a bunch of academics who got together and talked about the Kardashians. That was very important on Twitter in the last few days. So in this work to be with it and in the know, there's so many ways to do it, and there are new pressures to do it, and it's actually becoming hard to avoid for many people. So there are people who say I'm not glamorous, but they might be worried about whether or not the talk they gave last week at a conference got tweeted about. And I would argue you could even extend the idea of glamour labor to thinking about reputation as part of one's impact in the image world. So my understanding of glamour labor was inspired by anthropologist Stephanie Sadra Orifai's idea of the labor theory of beauty, a process by which she first identified in the can-do politics of America's Next Top Model. So in this theory of beauty, anyone can achieve the beauty that confers social legitimacy if they just work hard enough. If you experience society as racist, classist, sexist, or whatever is bothering you that day. Sorry, I don't mean to minimize. Let me say that differently. If you experience society as racist, classist, or sexist, that is because you are not working hard enough. There's nothing wrong with society. The problem is with you. So this is a departure from the role of glamour in the past, where the point was to hide the work and look like it was effortless. So by showing her effort, Kim shows us all how she's the all-American girl with an all-American work ethic, and if we just work hard too, we will make it like she did. So in fact, this is the all-American girl I was thinking of. And her message is, you can be like me. Kim says, play my game, and you will be training yourself for the life of glamour. Practice here, and if you play the real game right, you can achieve the dream of fabulous wealth, fame, and an enviable lifestyle like hers, if we envy that type of lifestyle. And how do you get all this? Kim will show you. She's got that attitude, you've got to work it, girl, as the song goes, and we're all just girlfriends hanging out. So here we've got some slides of how she posts on Instagram how to do her makeup. So as a piece-by-piece makeup, she does YouTube videos with makeup tutorials, and you can see the transformation here, although it's interesting that she didn't go from the naked face. It's already pre-contoured, but that's as natural looking, I guess, as she's willing to go. That's not true. She's been on Instagram without any makeup on at all. But so that's the before, and this is the after, and then there's a how to achieve this look. And here she is, pregnant at the InStyle Awards. And note here, if you go to this app, you will get a breakdown of the look for less. So you too can achieve this, apparently, if you follow Kim's kind instructions, which she so generously shared with us in her Instagram feed. Okay. So in this cultural moment, I would argue it's no accident that Kim is a departure from other celebrities or fashion icons insofar as she is more like a typical woman. Now let me explain that. In the speed of the digital age, where fashion has sped up so fast it actually is trying to attract regular women to build the markets for fast fashion, Kim is not 7 feet tall with a 20-inch waist and legs the circumference of pencils. She is notably short in a supermodel tall world, and she has curves galore, yet fashion designers are notorious for their fashion designers love the clothes hanger body, and she is the opposite of the clothes hanger body, and this is her with, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, Olivier Roustring of Balmain, who says, and he's put himself up there on Twitter and Instagram, that Kim is his ultimate muse. So she's the opposite of the fashion model body, yet she has become the darling of fashion design. So Kim presents herself as a girl who made herself beautiful and fashionable, and she's happy to show us all how to do it. And this trend toward self-modification and branding as a common practice goes farther back than Kim. And this is really important to note. So we like to think that this is all just happening now in the digitalization of our culture, but in fact, there are longer historic roots that help see how the level of development of imaging technology actually affects how bodies are valued and which parts of bodies are valued. So to understand Kim Kardashian today, we have to go back to the portrait studio of the 1800s, during a time frame when one's countenance, for instance, gained a new economic value. So let's look at these two images. On the left here, we have something that was called a carte de visite, and these became wildly popular in the 1800s, in the United States for sure, and in the United States. People collected these cards. So when you would go calling, you'd leave a calling card, and then this new rage of having the carte de visite would be you'd leave your calling card with your picture. And people got albums and were collecting them, and then started collecting cartes de visite of people they didn't know to fill out their albums. And so some women of particularly pleasing countenance found that they became popular. People would buy copies of their carte de visite, even though they had never met them, to fill out their albums. So the carte de visite actually turned into, it sounds kind of similar to adding to your Instagram feed somebody who's interesting pictures, but you've never met them. It's kind of the same idea, I would argue. So these carts became a currency of social legitimacy and promotion, and a promotion vehicle. Let's start over. These carts became a currency of social legitimacy and a promotion vehicle by means of which normal people could achieve some small measure of fame at a moment when traditional social mores were in a process of upheaval. And the parallels to Instagram are fascinating. So through technological innovations in photography that made mass producing these cards possible, the face became newly valuable. And in fact, this was the time frame in which fashion modeling, posing for money, became a legitimate job as well. So it was an interesting cultural moment. There was some legislation that made people suddenly able to claim that their face was private property and they could sell it or buy it, or people could buy it. So that was a change that happened in around the same time frame as the carte de visite. And if we fast forward to the digital age, we see how Instagram, like the carte de visite, is also a currency of social legitimacy and a promotional vehicle by means of which normal people could achieve some measure of fame. But the key difference is that the current imaging mode brings new value not just to the face, but to the body. And you can see here, we don't even see her face. And we were discussing this last night, and it's so normal to see images like that. I hadn't even picked up on the fact that her face isn't even in the picture. And often in those wearing it today blogs or outfit of the day blogs, the face is cropped out. It just has to do with the body. So these changes are wrought by the digital age, which brings me to my next point, that technological frames, or imaging regimes as I call them in the book, such as the photographic print, the cinematic scene, or the pixelated screen, have had clear effects on what types of bodies are seen as valuable and why. So here is a graphic of the digitization of social life. And how am I doing on time? I'm good? Okay. And so we're probably familiar with a lot of these processes. I won't go into detail, but I'm trying to frame my thinking about Kim Kardashian and the value of bodies within the Twitter age, the Instagram age, in this moment that I argue is a digitization of so many aspects of our lives. And I periodize the transition of imaging technologies in the book from the gaze of cinema to the glance of television to the blink of social media. So we're living in the age of the blink. Oh, look, and I've written over. It's written over here, so I'll tell you what it says. So images and social connections change so quickly, if you blink, you'll miss them. And in the digitization of social life, we have new bodily engagements with media technologies, such as body tracking, which incites the idea of the datalogical body, that is always online and always on. And in fact, my current project is about the always on body that's afforded through wearable technology. So it's a transition from glamour labor to wearable tech. And the idea is that these types of engagements or entanglements with technology have opened bodily connection and vitality to metering and regulation and tracking of the body through every click and every move, or the body is tracked through every click and every movement. So we're living in this cultural moment, and in the process, we end up with this moment where people like Kim Kardashian and her family are working their brands. So in the digital age, live streaming, geolocating, biosensing, and selfies amplify glamour labor, extending it beyond the exclusive realm of fashion into the everyday. So as so many of us turn to the screen to find the information we need to achieve our new look, email, blog, or tweet about what we want to buy, to be, or to achieve, we intimately engage with technologies organizing bodies in time and space. The life promoted by the glamour labor of people like Kim Kardashian, of constant self-promotion and fashioning, has become something few can escape within the rise of social media culture. Every click builds an effective circuitry, metering our engagement and potential to engage, bringing it to market. So it's important to note that we bring ourselves to market in the digital age, drawn in part by the lack of viable opportunities elsewhere. So I'm going to come back to this slide. In fact, in 2011, there was a study done that found that many young people saw fame as an aspirational value among wanting to be a doctor or a cowboy or a fireman. They want to be famous. So kids are now looking to be famous in a way that they hadn't so much in the past. But what's so crazy about wanting to make money just being yourself on television or on YouTube, for instance? And some scholars have observed that in the face of precarity, achieving celebrity status has come to seem as reasonable a life goal as any other. So Angela McRobbie has referred to this process as a Faustian bargain that saps one's youth, potential, and financial resources in pursuit of glamorous work within the, quote, ruthless and tyrannical deployment of cool as a disciplinary regime of work and leisure. And I did not know this till I started doing my Kardashianology for this conference. But as I studied up, I found out that, does anyone know how to pronounce this? That the show Keeping Up with the Kardashians is often fondly referred to as Hooked. I don't even know how you say it. But this came up a lot, and I realized later that this is actually how people refer to the show. Okay, so what's fascinating to note is how the carte de visite democratized access to visual information about celebrities in a process by which normal people appropriated the styles and poses of celebrity, and the same mechanism seems to be at work in Insta-fame today. So both in the 1800s and now, these poses promised a possible route to fame and fortune during economically difficult times. So what's even more confusing is that some people actually do make a living doing just that. So these are some examples of fashion bloggers who, some of whom do seem to have made a living out of just photographing their outfits every day. And I have a colleague, Brooke Duffy, who works on, she's doing an ethnographic study of bloggers, and she's finding that the beautiful lifestyle, and what a surprise, right? The beautiful lifestyle online belies 80-hour work weeks and endless amounts of trying to show oneself as authentic when in fact it's completely manufactured. And so it's not a lifestyle that anyone would really want, but it's presented as if everybody should try to get it. So, 5 more minutes? Okay, I think we can do this. Oh, that's great. Okay, so tweeting about or posting one's latest physical accomplishments, posting a selfie of one's newly enhanced bum, slimmed waist, or latest outfit pulls one's bodily potential and connectivity into metering and regulation, an availability which facilitates capital's constant expansion. At the same time, the very act of posting puts one's glamour quotient on the line, rising and falling by the metrics of likes, hearts, influence, scores, and views. Keeping the quotient high becomes a sort of compulsion, the glamour labor to stay visible and relevant, to matter. Now, the whole process has been made fun of online, so I put in young girls duck facing, and I got a bunch of images, some of which I believe must be photoshopped. But this is kind of a trendy meme that people are making fun of. They're pictures of babies and monkeys and cats all duck facing. But thinking about these issues raises some important questions. So there's actually a Selfie research network. I'm not sure if people are aware that there's a whole collection of researchers that there's some people are here. So I'm quoting from your Selfie research network people. I love this, that you're out there. And Selfie researchers argue that selfies represent a paradox. Since they are self-directed, are they evidence of self-empowerment? As communication scholars Terry Sempt and Nancy Baim note, selfies tread the, quote, anxious intersection of race and gender and highlight cultural tensions that have real-life consequences. So is taking selfies a, quote, primary pathology of our time? Or is it that selfies have been adopted by young people, women, and people of color, which makes our society very anxious, especially if it's an empowering technology? And other scholars have argued that these images hypnotize and palliate us as they gloss over societal tensions and distract us in the age of the blink. So I have a bunch more questions, but I'll leave us with a question about what kind of crises do Kim's selfies palliate? As our conference organizer, Meredith Jones, has pointed out, Kim is racially ambiguous, for instance. She married a black man, a relatively taboo practice in the US. And so what types of racist or classist inequalities or powerlessness of women, or what kind of shallow society and does the Insta-fame of Kim show us? So are women dupes, are they orchestrating their own power? So I was really surprised again to see how small it is. But this is the cover of Kim's book, Selfish, which we could probably spend a whole day talking about in terms of the ideas that it raises with regard to empowerment or being a cultural dupe. And just the last 2 slides then, and then I'll be finished. So it's also interesting to note that these pressures aren't just applying to young girls selfie duck-facing in the bathroom. There are also pressures that are extending to other parts of society. So this is a book called Bikini Ready Moms, in which the author explains that the pressure to look fabulous is extending to also the pregnant body and beyond. So that was a domain where it used to be at least one space where women didn't have to constantly represent and be amazing looking. And now she's saying that Bikini Ready Moms is this new form of momism, where these same kind of glamour labor pressures are extending to the pregnant body and the mom body. And I thought this was really fascinating too. So recently, this is movie star Chris Pratt, and he put this on his Instagram feed. And granted, it's very different kinds of pressures for men and for women to look a certain way, but I'm concluding with the idea that we are really fascinated with the body that morphs or changes. So as long as it's changing, it's news, it's something that should be imaged, it's something that's productive for these image economies. And so he used to be quite doughy and fleshy and overweight by some standards, and then he became this cut body. Now he has a sense of humor about it, and he compared himself to a feminine hygiene product for the fact that he put this up there. But at the same time, it got a lot of hits, and it seems to be that there's this fascination with the changing body applying to his kind of body as well. So I've identified many of the negative or problematic aspects of the digital age, and this will be my concluding statement. Is there some hope also in the idea of morphing bodies and change as becoming the ideal, as opposed to just a fixed, super skinny or voluptuous ideal that I showed at the beginning? Is there some way to redirect these energies to make them more equitable or humane? So I point to the rise of fashion blogs and the body positive blogs that are out there, where women are of certain proportions are blogging about their fashions and what they wear, and so there's kind of a body positivity movement that this digitization has made possible. There's Gabby Fresh, Nicolette Mason, and the Curvy Fashionista. There's also this idea of the limit-pushing energies of digitization that has made, perhaps somehow facilitated a space for transgender individuals to enter fashion's fold. And I will leave us with the idea of trans and how it is that the cultural moment in which we live has made this transition possible. So you may or may not have been familiar with what Bruce Jenner was like in the 70s when we were all growing up in the States, but that's who Bruce Jenner was. Very masculine, very manly, athletic hero. And here, Caitlin is today. You're still our hero, right? So in conclusion, embodied in Kim Kardashian's brown skin, her exotic looks, and her giant backside, is there a message of inclusiveness, or is it a sham? Her work attracts publics to a way of being in the world that makes resourcing physical bodies and social connectivity by exposing them to technological mapping and manipulation, something everyone should want to do. And the themes we will discuss today will highlight these important cultural flashpoints and tensions so urgently in need of examination. So I thank you.
Thanks, Betsy, that was great. I wanted to ask you a question that it maybe follows on a little bit from the first question about labour, and the earlier term aesthetic labour was used to describe the way companies and corporations harness the aesthetic capabilities of the body to promote their corporate service or whatever. And you use the slide where hostesses and so on. Can you elaborate? Is there a difference between that and glamour labour, or is glamour labour just an extension of that into just what we do, or we're not necessarily always at work? I just wondered if it's the same or different, and in what ways might it be the same or different?
So aesthetic labor is definitely, I would argue, a component of glamour labor, but as we figured out, aesthetic labor usually is labor that's got more of a dictation on how it should be achieved. So aesthetic labor is the work on the self and presence and diction and persona that is dictated by a corporate value system or corporate image. The corporation says, you are the software of our company and you have to look a certain way, and so you have to aesthetically labor to achieve that, your makeup and your hair, your clothing, how you speak, how you walk, how you hold your body. So I would argue, and I am arguing, that aesthetic labor is part and parcel of glamour labor, but it's not as directed by corporate ideals or as delimited by a corporate image. And in fact, it kind of goes with the neoliberal pressures of, we're not going to tell you as a corporation what you should be, but if you self-brand yourself properly, maybe we'll give you a freelance gig, and we won't give you health insurance, and we'll fire you whenever we want. But if you self-brand a lot and do your aesthetic labor and your glamour labor and all these different types of presentation of self in everyday life, maybe you can make a little bit of a profit with us. So it's much more freelance and free-form than aesthetic labor is.
We've got time for one last question. Yeah, Neil.
Thank you. Thank you. I really enjoyed the talk. And I was interested by your point at the end around the value of the changing body and the morphing body, and how you use that kind of idea. But I was wondering the extent to which changing is an important issue there, because people's bodies change all the time, right? All bodies are constantly changing in different kinds of ways. And the extent to which it was actually changing in relationship to a destination, and it was the particular relationship or movement towards a destination that was being valued. So kind of a travelling body as much as a changing body that was really being displayed and produced through those kind of digital cultures. So I wondered basically the extent to which you've reflected on the relationship between change as and for itself and changing relationship to a destination.
Well, some of this thinking came through I did an ethnographic study of fashion models for the book, for this year's model. And I was interested to see how the fashionable ideal, which used to be relatively fixed, recently has become so fluid and changeable and I suppose moving. And the idea of just showing the body in all of its changeability has become so much more valuable. So like when actresses, or now we're called actors, would become pregnant, we didn't see them. We didn't see them on the beach with their baby bumps. That wasn't big news. Gaining and losing weight was something that if an actor or an actress or a model, God forbid a model, gained weight, the body would be hidden. But because it didn't meet that ideal that was out there, that something we were all changing toward. Now it seems that the ideal is changing all the time and in fact working to become whatever, that whatever body, right, seems to be the new ideal. And that seems to be what's valuable, not having achieved that thing, that particular look. So I'm not sure what you mean by destination though.
Well, I guess you showed quite well that there were multiple kind of visions that were being contested and new ones are emerging. I think that's exactly your point. But my sense was that the examples you used of the changing body were meant to be either conforming to or establishing new kinds of visions of the body, a destination, a type of body that people are moving towards. It's not just someone randomly changing their body, it happens all the time. I mean, I can imagine tattoo art might be an example where the destination is to demonstrate the changing of the shape on your shoulder or something. But I still have a sense that there is somewhere that the movement is going towards, even if that's a newly configured somewhere, and the configuration of that somewhere is through this digital documentation of change.
Oh, I think I see what you're saying.
So is it almost, you're trying to say that
there's still a destination.
The changing bodies that we're most interested in are ones that are consciously changing. So they're ones that have made a decision to change.
Or is there a proliferation of ideals, but there's still fixed ideals out there, just more
May I
of
just
them?
make another brief suggestion, but if I understood it correctly, or maybe it would be a way to bring it together, not change itself, but the person changing his or her or whatever own body. I think that's what's really decisive. Not so much the destination, the journey, or the change, but to see I'm in charge, or here's a person in charge of making the change. I think that's what's so important. That's the way I would interpret it.
Both, though. I think the person making
not
the change.
let it have or have it happen, that the body itself changes, but that you're the one responsible for a body change.
I
And
think it's both
the
and, because there is
self.
intentionality, but I also try to argue, in the book at least, that the fact that the body changes is something that is economically interesting. So the tracking of the body's movement, the tracking of the body's vital signs, these are all things that are being put into metrics, and the body's becoming datalogical in a way that is really profitable, which is some of the time aimed towards an ideal, which you're intentionally trying to achieve, and other times just the fact of the body's vitality. There's a metering that's going on where there's effort that's trying to be made with regard to the changeability that's in all of us. So I think I'm trying to have it both ways there.
Yeah. No,